Are you just following the rules, or are you thinking about them? Life is full of small moments. Moments where you can choose. You can do what everyone else does. You can follow the path that is already there. Or you can stop for a second. You can ask a simple question: why? Why do we do it this way? Is there a better way? This tiny pause is where everything can start to change. It is not about big fights or loud protests. It is about a quiet, smart choice. Don't simply do what you're told. Think about what you are doing. This essay is a celebration of those small choices. We will look at people who decided to think for themselves. Our days are often governed by invisible rules, rhythms set long before we arrived. We follow them without thinking. We accept them as just the way things are. But what happens when we pause and quietly ask, why? Let's start with Sarah. Sarah worked in a big, quiet office, a place where the loudest sound was often the gentle hum of computers and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. It was a world of unspoken agreements and predictable patterns. Every day felt like a repeat of the one before. She came in at 9. She sat at her desk. She did her work, focusing on the tasks laid out for her. The day was a steady, unbroken line of productivity. And then came the one mandatory break in that line. Lunch was exactly 1 hour, from 1 to 2. Not a minute more, not a minute less. It was a rule as solid as the building itself. But Sarah, in her quiet way, was an observer. And she noticed something happening during this rigidly scheduled hour. Many of her colleagues finished their lunch in just 15 or 20 minutes. And then they waited. They scrolled through their phones, stared at the clock, or made small talk to fill the remaining 40 minutes. It wasn't restful. It wasn't productive. It felt like a collective holding of breath, a waste of precious time and mental energy. This forced pause didn't recharge them. It just drained them. Sarah thought about this rule. Why was it so strict? She did a little digging and discovered its origins. The policy was a relic written decades ago from a time before laptops and smartphones, when everyone had to be physically present at a switchboard or a front desk. But things were completely different now. In today's world, people could answer an urgent email from anywhere. The work was flexible, fluid, and always getting done. The strict one-size-fits-all lunch hour seemed old and unnecessary, a ghost of a bygone era. She could see that the rule didn't just fail to help productivity, it actively harmed morale. It made people feel untrusted and unhappy, like cogs in a machine that had forgotten how to evolve. And that's when Sarah felt a small spark of an idea. It wasn't a loud rebellion, it was a quiet question. What if? What if the rule could be changed? What if the solution wasn't to complain, but to propose something better? She decided to think, not just obey. This wasn't about sending angry emails or staging a walkout. There would be no big, dramatic complaints. Her approach would be different. It would be quiet. It would be smart. She started small, with simple conversations. Do you ever wish you could take a shorter lunch and leave a little earlier to beat the traffic? She'd ask a colleague by the coffee machine. The answer was almost always a resounding yes. With each conversation, she saw she was not alone. The frustration was shared, but no one had ever thought to voice it constructively. They had all accepted the rule as unchangeable. Armed with this quiet consensus, she wrote a short, friendly proposal. It wasn't a demand. It was a well-reasoned suggestion, outlining a simple, flexible alternative. It was the first step in a quiet rebellion, born not from anger, but from observation and a simple desire to make things better for everyone. It began with a simple observation. For weeks, Sarah had felt the rhythm of her office was off-key. The mandatory 1-hour lunch break, a rule set in stone, felt less like a restorative pause and more like a disruption. She saw her colleagues, a quick meal, then 40 minutes of aimless scrolling. A collective, unspoken sigh hanging in the air. Instead of accepting it, she quietly investigated. She observed, made notes, and created a small, anonymous survey. The data confirmed her hunch. 70% of her team felt the long break interrupted their focus. An idea formed, not as a complaint, but as a solution. She drafted a clear, logical proposal on a single page, focused on mutual benefit, improved well-being, and sustained productivity. The hardest part was taking that first step. With the proposal in hand, Sarah walked to her manager's office, her heart pounding. She was questioning a rule that had been there for years. What if her manager, Jane, saw her as a troublemaker? But as Sarah explained her reasoning, she saw something unexpected. Jane listened. She didn't interrupt or dismiss it. Jane had noticed it too. The midday slump, the energy evaporating during long lunch breaks. She'd seen the tired faces struggling to regain momentum. Sarah wasn't just complaining, she was articulating a shared, unspoken problem. Sarah's proposal was the solution Jane hadn't known she was looking for. It proposed a flexible 30-minute break, allowing employees to leave 30 minutes earlier. It wasn't about working less, it was about working smarter. Jane saw the potential and decided to support Sarah. They agreed to a 1-month trial for their department, a pilot program to test the theory. The news spread quickly. An email went out, and a quiet buzz turned into a wave of excitement. For the first time, they had a choice. The freedom to fit their break to their own lives. Some used the extra time to pick up their kids from school without rushing. Others hit the gym. Different needs, both respected. Many left at 4:30, heading home with extra daylight. The office itself felt different. There was a new energy, more focused and dynamic. At the end of the month, the results were clear. Productivity hadn't just held steady, it had increased. People were more focused, less stressed, and reported a significantly better work-life balance. The numbers told a powerful story. The company made the policy permanent for their department. Within 3 months, it spread to the entire organization. It all started because Sarah decided to stop and think. She didn't just complain, she observed, gathered evidence, and built a case for a better way. She asked, why? She asked, what if? Her small, quiet rebellion made work better for everyone. This is the power of a quiet question. It proves you don't have to be loud to be heard. Sometimes the most profound transformations begin not with a shout, but with a thoughtful whisper. Don't simply do what you're told. Look around, ask questions, and dare to suggest a better way. Let's meet Leo. Every day he walked past this wall, a long, oppressive stretch of gray concrete. It wasn't just ugly, it was a void in the heart of a living neighborhood, sucking the color out of everything around it. It drained his energy, a silent reminder of forgotten potential. No life, no color, no story. But Leo was an artist. Where others saw a problem, he saw a huge, public canvas. The idea took root, and that night he filled his sketchbook with images of the community, the faces he saw every day, the local bakery, the kids in the park. He wasn't just planning to paint a wall, he was planning to tell its story. He knew official channels would mean months of meetings, likely ending in a no. So he decided to act. This was his quiet rebellion. He didn't have permission or a budget. All he had were some leftover cans of paint, a few worn brushes, and an idea that felt more important than the risk. So early one morning he began. He started with a vast, brilliant sky, painting over the gray with gradients of blue and a hopeful sun. The sound of the brush against the rough surface was the only permission he needed. He knew he might get in trouble, but transforming this oppressive space into something beautiful mattered more. Soon, the first passerby stopped. An older woman walking her dog. She watched for a moment, then smiled and said, "It's about time someone did that." Then a shop owner came out, initially skeptical, but the sight of the emerging sun seemed to melt his resistance. These small affirmations were like fuel. By lunchtime, a small crowd had gathered, drawn in by the color. They weren't just watching, they were engaged. They were teachers, mechanics, and retirees, and they saw a change happening and wanted to be part of it. A young woman asked if she could help paint a flower. A man offered to buy more blue paint. Suddenly, it wasn't just Leo's project. The wall came to life, belonging to the neighborhood. People suggested scenes from their shared history, the old library, a portrait of a beloved local musician, the annual street fair. It was becoming a living storybook of the community, designed by the community. The work continued for days as the mural grew. It was colorful, joyful, and slightly messy, with imperfections that only added to its character. Each flaw was a sign of a new neighbor who had joined in. It was their collective masterpiece. When it was finished, the entire street felt transformed. The gray void was now a vibrant landmark. It wasn't just a wall with paint on it. It was a destination, a symbol of what can happen when one person takes a small creative step. Leo's single act had inspired a system of positive change. People started planting flowers and organizing weekend cleanups. They saw that you don't always need permission to make the world more beautiful and connected. Don't simply do what you're told. Look for the blank walls in your own life and create the world you want to see. Our final story is about Maria, a retired teacher. For years it was an eyesore. She called the city private property. The owner never answered. She could have given up, but she saw potential. A garden. Her rebellion started small, picking up trash. Soon, a few more joined. Within a week, the lot was clean. She turned a small patch of earth and planted seeds. No announcement, just action. Don't simply do what you're told. Sometimes you have to start digging. Neighbors watched from windows. Then, tiny green shoots. Proof her idea could work. Plots marked with string, tools, and advice shared. The garden became the neighborhood's center. Food, play, and friendship took root. From weeds to wishes, tomatoes red, sunflowers tall, air rich with green. Take what you need. The local news noticed. Water line and shed funded. City designates a permanent garden. Her quiet, patient green rebellion secured space for generations. She replaced neglect with love. Sarah, Leo, Maria. They don't seem like rebels, but they are. Smart rebels. They saw what wasn't working. An old rule, an ugly wall, a forgotten lot. They could have done nothing. Instead, they chose to think and act. Their actions were small and simple. Then they grew into something bigger. Quiet power. No badge required, no big budget. Pay attention. Be willing to question. Have the courage to try a small new idea. Think about your day, your work, your school, your street. What's the small thing you can change? Ask why. Then ask what if. What is the smallest step you can take? Your power lies in that first step. Don't simply do what you're told. It's not about causing trouble. It's about responsibility and creativity. Make your corner a little better than you found it. Find one small thing, one quiet rule to question, one space to improve.